Welcome back to Real Talk, Real Change, the podcast where we break down local government, policy, and community impact straight from the source.
This is Tyler Morton, council member of the 1st District.
And I'm Adina Tatum. We're your host. We're here to have conversations that matter most to Lexington's 1st District and beyond.
And today, we're talking about something deeply connected to our everyday lives, community safety and well-being. Whether it's youth violence prevention, access to mental health support, or creating safe spaces, correct spaces for recovery, it's all a part of the bigger picture.
We'll also give you behind-the-scenes look at ordinances and initiatives our office is working on and how you can get involved. Today we're talking about community safety and well-being. When we talk about community safety, what do we really mean in the context of Lexington and District 1? What role does local government play in creating safe and healthy communities? And how do we balance policing, prevention, and investment in services when we talk about safety? We're going to talk about violence prevention and youth engagement, sober living and recovering residents, health and equity access, and how you can be involved. So, not having any guests today, you get to talk to us one-on-one. I'm going to start with violence prevention and youth engagement. Tyler, you've been vocal about youth mentorship and gun violence prevention. Can you speak on some of the work your office is doing in that space?
Indeed. So, the youth is one of my number one priorities. I have a lot of priorities, and, let's put it like this. My number one priority is to strengthen our neighborhoods, creating safe and healthy neighborhoods. That's the number one priority. But alongside with that come many different things, and youth engagement is at the top. So my office, and as for this first 6 months, we're doing many different things tied to youth. I've been in the schools. I've probably spoke with more than almost about 10 classes ranging from elementary all the way up to high school, and mainly, middle schools and high schools, but emphasizing that, they can become leaders and that they are young leaders and that they are the future. The theme that I emphasized was stay in touch with reality. Society and social media, all these things that are driving forces to decision-making should not be. What should be the driving force is that person itself, their vision, their dream, and where they want to get to. And if they stay in touch with reality, I strongly believe they can get further rather than making decisions on themselves. But with that being said, whether it be being in the schools, whether it be getting ready to create a youth advisory board, working on legislative items, revitalizing youth programming here in Lexington, and working with our community centers to make sure that youth engagement, youth programming are tailored to the surrounding communities at our community centers, that they are impactful as possible. So those are a couple items: just being in the school, creating a youth advisory board, legislative items like revitalizing youth programming, and working to make sure our community centers are impactful as possible.
So when you think about all those things and all the key parts that it takes to make this youth engagement and violence prevention successful, what does success look like in violence prevention? Is it fewer incidences, stronger relationships, or is it something else?
I think it's all of the above. It's important to emphasize that statistics really don't matter. When one kid or one young adult is taken away from us, that is impactful to their family, that's impactful to the surrounding community, and that is affecting hundreds, in some cases, maybe thousands. So statistics really don't matter. Let's take statistics out of it. What matters most is the sentiment in the community and the way that we coordinate services and resources, making sure that they're available and accessible while also impactful to address that issue.
You said something about statistics not being important, right? Because we look at statistics a lot and we see that the statistics have decreased as far as like gun violence and things like that. But we were at a peace walk this past weekend for Antonio Franklin, and someone said on the stage that one kid is too many, right? So I think that is definitely what you're referring to, where it doesn't matter if it's one, if it's 10, one is too many.
100%.
How do programs or initiatives like the Antonio Franklin Peace Walk or One Lexington shape our city's approach to safety or awareness and youth engagement?
Indeed. The Antonio Franklin Peace Walk and One Lexington are very important, and they are impactful. And that work must continue. But it's important to highlight that it should not be the only work that is addressing gun violence and addressing violence in our community, because there are gaps that exist that need to be addressed, and those voids need to be filled. Specifically related to gun violence, we have to start addressing root causes to gun violence, which I say is poverty. Start addressing poverty, not just advocacy and providing direct resources. We need to strengthen our communities, aiming to make them safer and healthier.
So that gives us a great segue into, creating safer and healthier neighborhoods. We've been working on something with sober living and recovery residents, an ordinance for that. Can you talk about the recovery residents ordinance and why it matters to both public safety and community well-being?
Yeah, of course. Well, I'd like to start off with kind of how I got into the fold of the sober living ordinance. So, throughout the campaign trail, this was something that came up to me within almost all the neighborhoods that I canvassed and that I knocked doors in. And it was evident that I wanted to do something with this, because one of my promises was that I would uplift, support, and defend our neighborhood. But the other one was that I would start the work day one. So as soon as I got into City Hall as an elected official, I started to dive into seeing where are we at with the sober living ordinance and what can I do to help push this through along or help work with to get it done. So in this case, I would like to give a shout out to our Oakwood Neighborhood Association. From last year, about between August and October, they organized, they band together, they seen a challenge, and they said, hey, we're going to address this challenge. So they have been meeting every Monday since then, and that has been beautiful. An organized group, they have come up with action items, and they said that we want to be a part of the solution. In this case, when I got into office, the administration was already working on a draft ordinance within their own shell, I would say. That what happened is I ended up putting it in committee, aiming to start the work on that from the council floor as soon as possible. It took a little time for us to get that ordinance from the admin, but as soon as we got it, we ended up being able to do a presentation in April at the Social Service Public Safety Committee, where we realized that there's still more work to be done on this ordinance. Work that makes it so that the community can have some involvement, that we're emphasizing the community, but also work to make sure that we are protecting those, protecting those in recovery, but protecting the community, the neighborhoods as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more too. I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that I want to ask is, how do we ensure the recovery housing is accountable to its neighbors while still protecting the dignity and rights of the people in recovery? Because I think one of the walls or barriers that we faced when working on this ordinance is that this is a protected class, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Indeed. Let's break it into three prongs. I want to break it into transparency, accountability, and protection. First, transparency in the case to our neighborhoods regarding where our recovery residents are going to be and when they are coming. Right now, there is no regulation or anything on the city level, on the local level. So essentially, recovery residents are just popping up, and as a residential definition, they can. So the transparency piece, providing some type of notification and providing some type of communication so that our neighborhoods can know that they are gaining new neighbors. The accountability piece. Overall, this ordinance and this regulation is to weed out the bad actors. We know that the good actors, you tend to not really even notice that they're in the community. They tend to be having thriving recovery residences, but the bad actors, you tend to have major concerns, major complaints. And in certain cases, we know that, and just to be frank, it could be a money grab for folks. So weaving out the bad actors, that accountability piece, and then the protection. We know that we have to protect those in recovery from those bad actors, those folks that are just doing it for money and not trying to see those folks thrive and get to the best spot they can be in their life, but also protecting our neighborhoods, because those neighborhoods deserve to be safe, they deserve to be healthy, and bad actors should not be able to come in to bring a business into the community and then bring down this community for their own benefit, I would say. So transparency regarding notification, accountability regarding getting rid of the bad actors, and then the protection piece, protecting those in recovery, protecting our neighborhoods. So, and just to go a little bit deeper, what does that accountability look like? That means a piece of that ordinance having some type of enforcement within it, saying that after a while, after so many complaints, after certain things that may take place, this should not be in a neighborhood. That they should not be able to run this. So we need to have some type of enforcement piece in that ordinance, and that, in my opinion, that is what is lacking right now.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the main holdups, is that enforcement piece. But also, if we keep it real, like we should here, what has been like one of the, and this is, go a little bit off script, what is one of the main challenges when it comes to communicating what really is truly in our power of things that we can do with this ordinance and what is out of our control?
Well, we're bound by the Fair Housing Act and state laws that say, one, like I said, recovery residents, sober living homes are defined as a residence. The big dilemma is, and I'm not going to say that I disagree, it's a bit, they say it's a business. Well, in the standpoint, it is a business. They're making money off of individuals. They're getting money from Medicaid, they're charging rent in certain cases. The operator is definitely getting profit out of it. But in the case of the Fair Housing Act, in the case of state law, which we are binded to, we have to listen to, it is defined as a residence. So there is no other way around it. Federal law defines it as residence, so it is able to go into residential areas, and
Right.
that's just what it is. So we have to find a way to, like I said, make sure that we're just protecting our neighborhoods in any way possible, protecting those in recovery, and at the least informing our neighbors what is taking place in their neighborhoods. And just like I said, we at the end of the day, we just want a strengthened community, a safe and healthy community, to be good neighbors, no matter if it's just a single family dwelling or if it's a recovery residence dwelling. Neighborhoods deserve to have good neighbors, and there should not be any nonsense taking place within neighborhoods, especially out of homes that should be regulated to the highest capacity. Because when we hear from our recovery residents folks, they say this should be the beautifulest house in the community. This should be the well-kept house in the community. Those folks should be great neighbors. You shouldn't hear anything.
And you shouldn't even know it's
and you should not
living.
exactly. Yeah,
Right.
you shouldn't even know it's there. So that's almost what the neighbors in the communities is expecting. And for those bad actors that are out there, that is not the case. In certain cases, you see drug dealing. In certain cases, you may see folks that aren't even recovery in these houses coming to these houses. You see, high crowds of folks possibly outside the house. I mean, there's just
More people than supposed to be
exactly
in the house.
more people exactly. So all these different things, which points towards, hey, well, maybe that's not a recovery residence, or it's being used as a scapegoat as a recovery residence, but something else is going on. And those are the residents that our community is talking about. The community that I spoke with, my community at least, they are not talking about the good actors. They are not at all. They are talking about the bad actors that are bringing chaos and bringing negative things to their community and surrounding communities.
Right. So, like, one of the things that has been brought up is that the neighbors or whoever is like abutting property be notified that this house is going in. Do you feel like that's going to cause more scrutiny or more like of an eagle eye being paid, like attention being paid to that home because they know it's a recovery residence, even if they're crossing all their T's, dotting all their I's, and it doesn't appear to be a recovery residence? Do you feel like the neighbors being notified will maybe make them look at it more under a microscope?
Yeah, so I think, well, let me give a little context. So within the draft ordinance, there is a clause that says zoning compliance. And what a zoning compliance does basically just says, is this, I don't want to call it business, is this recovery residence meant to be in this area? Well, as stated earlier, it's defined in the Fair Housing Law as a residence. Technically, it's automatically, yes, it's compliant. But what that does is it provides some notification to the community. My stance, I look at it from a double-edged sword. I don't have a problem with that notification piece. I wouldn't have a problem with even expanding it because I'm big on communicating to the community what is coming in. Transparency. Now, I know that there are some folks that have concerns regarding the fact that they believe that may lead towards harassment because they are notified that's coming next door to them, but I would somewhat disagree because if they are not informed, then they're going to try to figure out if they don't know, or they're going to ask, or then that just gives them more of a leeway to harass or to start looking into things. If we can just be as transparent as possible saying, hey, this is coming next to you, I am sorry, it is a residence, it's in a residential area. Unfortunately, there's nothing that can be done from the city standpoint other than making sure that they are certified, that they are licensed, and that they are following regulations. So I have no issue with that notification piece or even expanding the notification because it should all be about transparency. Like I said a little bit earlier, if it's the good actors, it should be a kept-up house. It should be a house that should not have many concerns or complaints, and it should be one that the community can stay as a thriving house. Now, if it's a bad actor, we're just going to have to go down another lane. But those folks in the community should know what they have in their neighborhood.
Right. What is the biggest misconception the public might have about sober living homes or recovery residents? And to add to this, the biggest misconception recovery residents operators may have about the ones trying to create this policy about the sober living homes.
Right. I think from the community lens, I think it's, I spoke a little bit on it earlier, recovery residence is defined as a residence. While, like I said a little bit earlier, it meets the definition as a business. Due to federal and state law, it is defined as a residence, which that just leads to some concerns from the community. Regarding the operator standpoint, I think this could benefit the operators because this sets a tone and sets a standard that, that essentially those folks are following the law. Those folks are, at a standpoint, have good recovery residents, because if you have a good recovery residence, then you should have no worries with this ordinance. Now, obviously, there is some licensing fees and all those things. But that cost just helps run that program.
Right.
And they're not too high, I would say. Compared to the profit that you get from the recovery homes in certain cases, I think that it could be met, that it's not a huge burden, right? A huge burden. So regarding operators, I mean, please feel free to reach out to my office. Please feel free to reach out to other council members and share us with your concerns. But I would tell you, this is not anything towards the good actors. This is towards the bad actors.
It shouldn't negatively,
Right.
impact anyone who is doing what they're supposed to be doing with these residents.
Correct.
Yeah.
Only the bad actors.
So originally, this started when you were on the campaign trail and you were meeting with neighborhoods and neighbors and seeing what they wanted and had concerns about in their neighborhood, right? So originally it was about community, but as we dug into this, we realized that it's also about the people that are in recovery as well. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I mean, from the beginning, I said it's about protecting our existing neighborhoods, but also protecting those in recovery. And within this regulation, as the same theme comes up, the bad actors, those folks aren't protecting those in recovery. They are protecting their pocket. And some of these households do not have the services, amenities, and all of those things needed to be a full-scale house. But not only that, when we start thinking about bad actors and what are the consequences, we have vulnerable citizens, vulnerable community members that are in recovery, that are trying to get to the right track, that may be negatively affected. We have to have services ready for those folks. We have to have social services ready. We have to have our unhoused folks, because whether you like it like that or not, whether you see it like that or not, if we shut down a sober living house, those folks are unhoused. They need services. Those folks are the most vulnerable folks when it comes to unhoused, because they're in recovery. And we know in the most traumatizing stage or in that type of time, what could be next. We don't want that to happen. We want them to continue their recovery.
Right.
We want them to move forward in their journey. And a bad actor should not be the person that makes them have to start all the way over.
Right.
The city should not be the entity that they have to start over. So we need to, when we're looking at this ordinance, we have to have structures in place to respond to the needs of the community. So, and it's twofold. We have to be able to respond to those in recovery, but also the existing community shouldn't have that burden on them, that we just unhouse 8 people in their community and there's nowhere for them to go.
Right.
And they're outside, their houses. So it is our responsibility, once we put these regulations in place, to have a well-rounded plan when this takes place, protecting our communities, protecting those in recovery, protecting people.
Well, it sounds like there is still a lot of work to be done with this ordinance, and luckily you have a lot of good colleagues that are working alongside you in this, community partners too.
Correct.
And keeping them informed and in the loop of what's going on.
I agree. I'm working on with 3 other colleagues with different expertise and different angles and different lens, which always is good. I strongly believe, and I think everyone knows this by now, the community's input is important. So we're working with the community. We'll be taking community input. Now, we'll be listening, and things that we can put in possibly or things we can adopt, we'll try to add. In certain cases, there are some things that cannot be added per our law department. We can push them and see, is that true or not? But if it does not meet the federal law or the state law, some things won't be added. But I can tell you, community input is the most important thing to me when it comes to creating legislation and making decisions. So that would definitely be a key piece in it, I would say.
So I want to pivot to health equity and access, which I think recovery residences and violence prevention, youth engagement, those are still all things that have to do with health equity and access too. When we talk about public health and safety, those two things go hand in hand. What are some barriers to health access in our district that you're working to address?
I think one of the barriers is trust. We all know in undervalued communities and communities that have been not invested in. And just when it comes to healthcare, and let's be frank, in African-American communities and minority communities, there's that trust gap because of what happened in history.
Yep, I was going to say it if you didn't.
Let's just be frank. So trust is the biggest thing. We have to build trust. But the second thing is access to services. I mean, it's, as many may know, in undervalued communities, access to many things are limited. But access to healthcare tends to be one of those main things that tend to be limited. So we have to make sure that we are, 1, building trust, 2, controlling the narrative with truths when it comes to healthcare, but then 3, making sure that we are providing as much access as possible. What does that mean? Maybe that's bringing health centers to the district or to surrounding communities of the district. Maybe that means transportation, better transportation to get folks to these services. In a nutshell, let's talk about mental health services. What we have right now with the city of Lexington, we have crisis response. I believe that service is critical when it comes to trust, when it comes to access, and when it comes, in an standpoint, to transportation as well. We have one unit, and it's in this pilot phase, which I'll be remiss if I didn't say, but we know that is impactful. That one, when you have someone in a mental health crisis, that is in a crisis, existing crisis, and you have a firefighter and a social worker pull up, compared to a police officer, who are you going to trust?
Right.
Let's just be frank. We're in a mental health crisis. It could escalate.
Yeah.
And who has the expertise to address that situation? Who has the expertise to assess the situation, to then get them to the right resources, right? So that's what I mean by trust. That's what I mean by access, and that's what I mean by transportation. And in this case, let's go a step further. We know in Lexington right now, the suicide rate has been at its highest last year, and it's upticking this year. That is a concern. That is a mental health concern. We know right now that the crisis response team is limited. There's only one unit, and crisis takes place 24/7, 7 days a week. So access to these services, and when we're thinking about public safety, these are the public safety services that we need to emphasize because, like I said, mental health crisis is not going anywhere. We're in a point in time that the federal government and other governments are slashing things, slashing assistance, slashing jobs, slashing all these type of things that directly affect our mental. And if we can have access to resources, access to services that directly provide trust, that directly provide access, that directly provide transportation to the right resources, then that could be very impactful to us right now. So as you can hear, I am very strong on crisis response, and that is something that I'm looking to expand this budget. And I will need the community support and help in voicing that because I think now more than ever is the time that we look at public safety and say, hey, this is about getting folks resources. This is about getting folks to where they need to go so that they can grow. It's not about just response. It's not about just the perception of what public safety was. Let's think about what public safety should be and how we can make people's lives better and how we can get the resources and how we can, like I said, the main goal, strengthen our neighborhoods, creating safe and healthier neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think you started to talk about like all these things that are being slashed. And I think that it's important to think about COVID, which I know we're like out of COVID, but our kids are still impacted by what that lockdown did to them socially, which I think is a big part of why mental health is so important because our kids were basically locked in the house and not being able to socialize, which building those skills helped them to learn how to navigate emotions and feelings. And right now, they don't have that ability, right? And in the Black community, mental health has not been something that has always been, it's been kind of taboo, right? So you have these kids who have parents that maybe don't think mental health is that important, but then you also have this generation that's coming up also raising kids that do know the importance of it and are trying to instill it in their kids. So being able to have access to this crisis response and someone who has that ability to come in and help someone navigate that situation that may be having suicidal thoughts or be in a mental health crisis, I think is very impactful and very important. And if you are taking, let's say, like I was talking about, slashing these programs, you're looking at, the Board of Education potentially being impacted by the administration, right? And if public schools are, attacked and affected by changes that are implemented, think about what that will do to kids that already don't have equal opportunity in school and what that can do to their mental health as well. So I think it's important to be able to share out resources in Lexington or surrounding. We're in Lexington in the 1st District, and make sure that they do have access to those resources. I think that you have New Vista and you have the new Empath Center at UK that are both, for that.
Yeah, correct. Now, I think you're 100% right, and you just open up a door and I'm going to walk right through it. And this is the perfect time for me that I think it's time to expand crisis response. We have, like you just mentioned, those 2 mental health centers needing folks to come that are waiting for folks to be brought to them, right? We have, right now, there's only one unit that works Monday through Thursday, 10 hours. The crisis is taking place after 6 p.m. on that Monday through Thursday. Crisis is taking place Friday through Sunday, 24 hours, right? Those mental health hospitals are open.
Yeah.
We need resources taking those in crisis to those areas, receiving the right resources. And when you have one unit can go where? One place at a time, one side of town at a time. When you have 2 units, double it up.
Right.
More effective. So I know that the argument, well, we're in the pilot phase and we're looking at it. Well, I will tell you, my argument against that would be, well, is this pilot phase data going to be concrete enough?
Right.
Right? My next argument would be is, look around. It's working.
Right.
Right? The third argument would be, it's needed.
Right.
We are in a mental health crisis, period. Suicide, I mean, ironically, last night, WKYT put an article out and a story out that emphasized how high suicides are in Lexington right now.
Yeah.
This is no joke. And we're talking about investing in people. We're talking about helping people. We're talking about providing services, public safety services that could stop someone from doing something very bad. And if it's just providing those services to one person, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
But on the other end, if we're missing one person because we don't have those services available, then that's an issue. So I see it, as we can, the defense, and it seems to be right now the only defense is, well, it's in the pilot phase. Well, I'm sure to say that the pilot phase can have 2 units and that those 2 units will be impactful. And I could advocate for my district strongly that those 2 units will be impactful for the first district now more than ever. You mentioned that through the COVID, everybody went crazy. Who was the president in the COVID? Okay. Who is the president now?
Right.
And where are we at now?
Right.
We're at where people's jobs are getting cut. People are losing their assistants. People don't know what is next. The answer to that question is, well, what is next? We don't know because it hadn't affected us yet. But I can tell you, 1 year from now, we're going to be sitting here and we're going to be talking about the services that are cut,
Right.
the resources that are not available, the people's mental psyche. We're going to be sitting here saying, well, it's up right now, but it's double next year because of this. And we can respond right now and have the services in place to address this. So as y'all can see, I will be doing a hard push for crisis response. It is needed now more than ever. I haven't given you all my arguments, but, I mean, we need it, and it's a great resource.
So not to pivot too much, but clearly this is something that our office is passionate about and would like to see move forward and is going to work hard to make sure that we make this a resource that is available.
And I'll throw one more thing in there. We're talking about, and it's just because the door's wide open, and I've already walked through it.
Right.
Crisis response is funded by grants, federal grants. We've mentioned grants already.
Right.
Grants are getting slashed left to right. And being that it's in place, I mean, we only have a certain amount of dollars, so when that runs out, what happens?
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to deal with that when we get there. We should deal with that right now.
I mean, that's a mental health crisis in itself. Somebody working in a position that's funded by a grant, like I work in nonprofit, with food insecurity, like if we're unable to provide meals for people who are unhoused or lower economic status, think about what that does to their mental. Like that can send somebody into a mental crisis, but it also can send people into a mental crisis that are running these agencies as well.
That's the point.
So it's a lot. It affects everybody. And I want to just make sure that I say suicide is not just about the person that is taking their life. That person is connected to many other people, and it affects everybody more than you know. And someone who has had family members to commit suicide, and it is something that you never forget and it never goes away. And if it could be prevented by a phone call to someone that could have stepped in and maybe changed that situation, we could be in a whole different place. So it's important.
It is.
So.
It is. And I mean, we'll leave it at that.
Right.
Crisis response, loading.
Right. So events like the Winburn Health Fair or hunger initiatives during school breaks, which we just had a major one, and you talked a little bit about youth council and stuff and us starting that, and I just want to say hunger did not take a spring break this year in our office, which has kind of put me behind on some things. But how do they tie into your broader goals for community well-being?
So, I ran on 3 principles, and everyone probably knows them by heart now. Accessible leadership. The second, and I won't go, being attentive, available, responsive to constituents. The second one, information and resources. Our District 1 has lacked investment, and I can keep saying this, we're undervalued, underprivileged, we have not been seen, we have not been heard. But in doing so, we know we have a majority of some of our lower socioeconomic status neighborhoods where there's resources needed now. And I'm a firm believer, you shouldn't have to go looking for resources. They should be at your footstep when you need them. So that's exactly what that Hunger Doesn't Take a Spring Break initiative did. Mm-hmm. We had 6 locations in our district where kids could come to the park, receive youth programming, but also receive a meal in a snack bag. The meal to eat there, a snack or eat at home, but also a snack bag to get them through the evening. Come back the next day, get another meal, and get another snack bag to eat through the evening. Our main goal was to make sure that kids were not hungry through the spring break, knowing that the school system is critical to providing 2 meals, breakfast and lunch. So we just wanted to make sure that they had access to meals to be able to eat throughout the spring break. So then that's just directly what you said, bringing resources to their footstep, and that's my second principle. Either information related to the resources or bringing those resources to the community. And I look forward to doing that still in many different ways in the future.
I think we had a very successful spring break, and I want to just emphasize that some kids go home from school and then that is their only meal that they've had was at school that day. And I know I opened the door to funding and grants and, public Board of Education, all those things. There was funding out there to help provide meals for these kids, and they would take snack bags home and stuff. And they're still being able to do that, but it's not in the way that they were maybe a year or two ago. So that hunger and that need for those resources has not went away, but the ability to provide those resources in our public school systems is diminishing a little bit. So to be able to be a part of that was very impactful. As someone who was food insecure growing up, I was at the park every summer eating. So I was glad to be a part of that. And it was amazing to see the kids come out and have fun and have activities and be able to interact with people that were mentors and get to know other people in their community and neighborhood as well.
Right. And shout out to everyone that made that possible. Adina was a huge help in spearheading that. She gets the credit for that, the flowers for that. But our volunteers, extremely important. So we had mentors out in the park, ranging from our juvenile probation office. Shout out to Mr. Matthew Crutcher. He brought his team out, and shout out to the team as well. He brought his team out almost every day of the week. Shout out to Councilmember Amy Beasley. She was there almost every day of the week. Councilmember James Brown was there multiple days. Councilmember Lynch came out to support us at Martin Village. I mean, it really takes the village to run this, but also major shout out to our sponsors. They help provide the food. They help provide the snacks and the meals, and without their support, we could have not done that. So it takes a village. That village stepped up, and as Adina said, it was a very successful Hunger does not take a spring break.
Yep. Nonprofits, for-profits, government agencies all working together to make sure our kids was fed. So it was awesome.
Right.
What can residents do to advocate for better health outcomes in their neighborhoods?
I think the first thing is we, especially in the 1st District, we have to get civically engaged. We receive investments. We receive attention when we speak out, when we speak up. I hear you. I see you. I see the challenges. And as y'all know, I'm going to advocate tirelessly, and I'm not going to stop up here on the 5th floor or on the horseshoe. But I need help. Sometimes it's just going to it'll start going in one ear out the other for folks. And that's just, they'll say it don't, but that's true. It go in one out the other, and they'll be focusing on their things. But when they see you, when you come to these meetings, when you send emails, when you tell them what you're dealing with, it becomes a little bit better. It becomes a clearer picture. The truth of the matter is everyone in the city hall down here coming out to the north side of town? No. Are they coming in the 1st District, seeing our challenges? Do they see you really?
Right. You got to show up down here sometimes
to. But they need to hear you, is my point.
Correct.
Because they don't see you right now. But if they hear you, then they can begin to see you. I mean, I believe we have some great people in this building. Mm-hmm. And I think that, some of them have their own districts. Some folks have their own agendas and things. Mm-hmm. And, is it their job to see you right now? Maybe not. But they represent the whole city. They represent you. So they don't see you right now, but once they hear you, I'm not going to say they're going to close their eyes. I believe they will open their eyes, and I believe we can start getting that investment needed. We can start creating safer and healthy neighborhoods with the goal of just having strengthened neighborhoods. So my main push would be advocate, get civically involved. Let me know your needs. Let me know partnerships. Let me know what you want to do, and if there's ways to get it done, let's do it. But down here at City Hall in government, it takes 8 votes, 10 if there's a veto, but 8 votes. And I'm 1 vote. So we need other council members seeing you. We need other council members hearing you. We need you to come down, take part in these meetings, know what's going on. I'm trying to spread as much information as possible about what's taking place. But if you're in these seats, if you're listening to it, if you're giving input, then you are part of that process. You are part of the solution as well.
Right. So what I hear you say is residents to advocate for these better health outcomes is to be civically engaged and be involved. Be involved in what's taking place at City Hall. Come downtown, sign up for public comment. And even if your comment is 1 minute or 30 seconds, your comment's on the record. And we have to sit and listen to it. And we want to hear you. because everybody's challenges are different. Be involved in your neighborhood associations, because you may not have the courage to come down here and sign up for public comment. But if you're bringing it up in your neighborhood association, especially in our district, one of our staff members is going to be there and we're going to hear it.
100%.
But also your presidents and secretaries that are in your neighborhood associations are going to advocate for you as well. I can speak very confidently that you have a great advocate in your council person for First District that will advocate for every challenge, whether there's none, he says, that's too big or too small. So as long as you're speaking up about it and we hear it, we're going to talk about it and we're going to bring it up.
Right. And then just to double back, what does advocating for a safe community or a strengthened community look like? Well, I come from the social science field, and I haven't stopped talking about the social determinants of health. What determines the health of communities, but also what determines the health of a person? And that is the access to health care. We spoke about that a little bit earlier. It's community context, the environment within the community. It's education and having access to good quality education, but also access to information. It's economic stability, majorly important. And then lastly, it's your built neighborhood environment. Those are the 5 things that we need to discuss when we're talking about strengthening our neighborhoods and creating safer and healthy neighborhoods. And when we start to advocate for those, to make sure those things are addressed and investments in those areas, then we can start seeing a safer and healthy community.
And not to go too far into something that we are personally dealing with, but just keeping it real on this podcast, trust is one of the most important things that you have to build within a lower socioeconomic community. Doesn't matter if you're white, black, brown, yellow, orange. It does not matter. If you cannot build trust in those communities and the neighbors in that community don't feel like that they can be honest or come to you if there is an issue, there are services that are provided that no one should be penalized for receiving those services. And not going too deep into that, but there is a multitude of services, right? Some people may not be able to do certain things to their home, or may need assistance in purchasing food or paying their rent. And if you are receiving those services, that's not something that you should be judged by or penalized on, right?
Not at all. And if they're receiving those services from the city, as a council member, as a leader at the city, I expect our city employees to respect our constituents, to not give biases or judge them by biases, and to give them the best and the highest effective and efficient work and services possible. Just because you're on the north side of town, or just because you're poor or come from a poor area, does not mean that you don't deserve respect, that you don't deserve the highest quality of work or services, and that you don't deserve to be inside the loop. And that is what's wrong with our communities right now. That's where the trust gap is. We've been left behind. We've been neglected. We've been overlooked. And when we do get services, it's let's get in there and let's get out.
Right.
It's a rush job. It's a Band-Aid job. No more of that. And I'm telling you right now, if I'm in this seat, however long I'm in this seat, I won't accept that at all.
So how can residents plug into these conversations and initiatives that we are working on? And there's so many conversations, and we're doing our best to get the word out through newsletters, social media, all those things. But what would be your suggestion on how residents can plug in?
It sounds cliche, but get civically involved. Follow our Facebook pages. Follow our Instagram pages. Come to the meetings. Call our office. Ask for updates. Attend, Adina put the hit in earlier, attend neighborhood association meetings. I believe that we have the most active neighborhood associations. We are attending at least 2 to 3 neighborhood associations a week. We are in the community. Yeah. I mean, if you want to get to us, you can find us. Trust me. I mean, we're there. And maybe what we need to do is we just need to communicate where we're going to be every week so that you can find us. But we're in the community. I mean, if you are in the district, you see us out there. If you follow the Facebook page and follow the Instagram page, you see us out there as well, just through our communication. But not only just seeing us out there, those pages are critical when it comes to resources. We have different information, what's going on, processes in government, what's going on in City Hall, what's going on out in the community, what our nonprofits and partners are doing. I mean, if you look at our media, I believe that's one first step towards getting information. But and that's just one first step. Like I said, we have to, and we are trying to think of innovative ways like this podcast to provide other forms of information. But it's cliche, stay civically engaged, just stay into the loop. And if you're not in the loop, get in the loop, and we'll put you in there. And
I just want to say, access is something, obviously, we've talked about in this. if you cannot attend meetings, they are available. They're recorded. You can go to lexingtonky.gov and go to Lex TV and you can watch them live. We do post when those things are taking place. All the meetings, whether it's a council meeting or a budget meeting, those things are typically live streamed and then they're saved. And then there's also transcripts. So if you are maybe hearing impaired and need to read, all those resources are online for you as well. So what gives you hope when it comes to the future community safety in Lexington?
What gives me hope is our community members. You know, we in the 1st District right now, the north side of town, we are organized. And I think we're more organized than ever before. Historic African-American groups, historic neighborhoods banding together saying, we won't take any more of this. And it's funny, they call it, and it's called NATO, you know, and it makes perfect sense. NATO for the nation, you know, when one of our allies like United States or one of our allies are attacked, all of the allies respond. Well, that's what's happening in the 1st District. When one of our communities, quote unquote, are attacked, and whether that be through growth, whether that be through neighborhood context, neighborhood environment, all of our neighborhoods are banded together to say no more. We are one voice. We are a strong voice, and you have to listen to us. If you don't listen to us, wait and see. And that ain't a threat. That's just saying folks are elected officials. They are supposed to be responsive to the community.
Right.
And, you know, we're all elected at one point. So organizing is real. And when you have a big group like that organized, I would walk on eggshells.
Well, I think it's important to organize, and I think that we have a history of organizing and getting stuff done. I think it's also important that once you organize and you start to make moves that you don't quit. You can't walk away just because one thing that you're working on gets checked off the list. You have to stay engaged and make sure that stuff stays in place, whatever ordinance or legislation that may be worked on or a rule, whatever, is still active, because I think that sometimes we tend to be working on stuff, it gets done, and then we wash our hands of it. I think it's also important to know that just because you're not in the 1st District doesn't mean what's taking place in the 1st District does not affect you.
Right.
There's 12 districts, and you'd be surprised that there are similar issues and similar things taking place in all these different communities and neighborhoods, and organizing not just in the 1st, but organizing in multiple neighborhoods. Like, numbers is power, right? So eventually being able to organize even is going to bring even more impact. So staying involved with what's going around, not in just your little bubble, but in all the different bubbles. And Lexington is beautiful. We have a beautiful ecosystem of neighborhoods and businesses and people in general. And I think sometimes we get siloed and don't realize really what's taking place. And we should take advantage of getting to know everyone and all the different communities and what people are working on and what challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I represent the 1st District, and that's my number one priority. But also I represent the whole city of Lexington. And what I hear from constituents all over the city is basically, while we come from a different side of town, we have common issues, have common challenges. And they thank me for stepping up and saying, hey, shedding light to this. They want leaders that are willing to say, let's take, and I think I mentioned my motto last podcast, let's take ego out of it. Let's take perception out of it. Take power out of it. Let's just serve and do the right thing for our community. Period. That's it. Serving and doing the right thing. And that means addressing the issues of the least of these. That means investing in the undervalued, in the least invested. That means doing what's right, seeing our people for who they are, and then, like I said, growing as a full city. The north side of town, the south side of town, we are one Lexington, right? There's just one side of town that has been undervalued. There's just one side of town in certain places that have been neglected, and it's time that we just invest in those while also locking in hand to hand and addressing these common challenges together.
There's so much that we've talked about, and I knew that like today was going to be a pretty jam-packed topic because there's a lot of different topics when it comes to violence prevention, youth engagement, then sober living ordinances, and then health equity and access. I feel like we could go so much further in a lot of these different topics about things, and maybe we will later on. But hopefully you took a lot of things away when it comes to community safety and the meaning and context of what that is in Lexington and District 1 and what roles we play in creating safe and healthy communities and balancing all those different things, policing, prevention, investment, and services we talked about.
Right. 100%. That was a great summary. I'll sum it up in one sentence, 2 sentences. It is our job here at the city to strengthen our neighborhoods, creating safe and healthier neighborhoods. It is the community's job to tell us how to do that, what they need. what you want to see and what the challenges are. So, I'm committed more than ever, and that's my number one priority: strengthen our communities, making them safer but also healthier. And I feel that is the job of the city to do. It's needed now more than ever in our neglected areas, in our areas that have higher gun violence, that have higher violence, that have a higher unhoused folks, that have less economic stability, that have gentrification, all these challenges in the first. It's needed now more than ever in the first, but it's needed citywide. Strengthen neighborhoods, making them safer, but also making them healthier. And I think that's a great summary.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Real Talk, Real Change. If today's conversation sparked ideas or questions, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, stay connected with us on social media, or even reach out to our District 1 office, 859-280-8254, or our email, district1, the number 1, at lexingtonky.gov. You can find us on IG at CMMortonD1, and that's the number 1, and on Facebook at Councilmember Tyler Morton, or CM Morton D1 Lex KY.
Be sure to follow, rate, and share the podcast, and most importantly, keep showing up for your community.
Until next time, keep it real, which we will always do, and keep working towards change.